We're on lesson 9 now. Moving through this curriculum. I tell you what, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like since we started this curriculum, and I know that there's only 13 weeks in each quarter, time has flown by for me. It just seems like, wow, we're moving through it quick. But yep, we're on lesson 9. So we're going to begin with the sin of whispers and backbiting. The sin of whispers really is the first one. When we talk about whispers, what's the word that comes to mind that is relative to whispers? Gossipers. Those who are talking behind others' back. Secret slander would be the way that it would be defined. Secret slander. A person who seeks to destroy another. Is it now? And I'm gonna tell you where I stand with this, and this is kind of how I feel about it. It's almost like, whenever we talk about those who vote, and I know this is weird. What are you talking about voting? But a lot of times I heard growing up, if you didn't vote, you don't have an opinion. If you didn't do your part, you don't have any opinion whatsoever about who's who or what's what. You've got to do your part for you to have your opinion about anything. Well, that's kind of how I feel about this. Folks who are going behind others' back without the intention of helping that individual, if your intention is not to help that person, but to only bring them down or talk negative against them, you don't have an opinion. Your opinion does not matter in the occasion whatsoever. Whisperers, those like that causes so much trouble in the church. It does. And when you have an individual who is doing that without the intention of helping that person, saving that person's soul, they want to talk bad about the person and the sin that person's in behind their back. Then it comes out in the open. What happens then? Then others take sides. Division takes place. It could go to the very extent of splitting the church, and that is not what needs to happen. That's why it has no place in the kingdom, and that's why here it's even classified as a sin. Backbiting, speaking evil of another. Again, that's involved when you're going behind somebody and you're telling this person these secrets, secret slander. You're talking to this person in private about another individual. If you're not intending to help that individual, then you have no business discussing that person's problems. Proverbs 16 and verse 28 says it plainly. A froward man soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends. Division. Paul, over and over in the New Testament, as we have seen in the letters that he wrote, he stresses that they be in unity. Because that's what's important. First of all, you go to Ephesians. I love going to Ephesians and going to Ephesians 4 to see those the 7 ones there that's represented. There's one. And as the church, we should be one body, not with separate opinions or beliefs or decisions or thoughts toward anything or separate practices, but we should all be one. That's just not the case, though. A lot of times we see a lot of churches, separate churches, doing things different. They feel like, well, I can do it this way, and it's okay. That's a very thin line to walk. A very thin line to walk. I understand that some things are tradition and some things are not, but when we're discussing division, it needs to be, or we're discussing unity, we need to do it the right way. We need to worship correctly. We need to do it correctly. But like I said, these people, these gossipers, they begin talking behind others' back. And I'll even go to this extent. I'll say that some people are guilty of gossiping and doing this whispering, this backbiting, sometimes even on accident. Maybe their initial intention was to help the individual, but they never get around to it. That would cause problems. That would cause heartache. It would cause, as I said again, division. And like I said, I wrote here up under Proverbs, it says they often want to remain anonymous. They don't want anybody to know who they are. You didn't hear this from me, but don't tell anybody I said this, but we can't do that. We can't. Not if we don't have the intention to go to that individual and help them. We need to, first of all, have that boldness to go to them first. That's what the Bible says. If we have something like that going on, if we have a problem with an individual doing something that he or she knows is not correct or not right, instead of talking about it with another one of your brothers and sisters, go to that individual. That's what the Bible teaches. Go to them first and talk to them. Why? Because their soul is important. That's why. Because they're your brother, they're your sister, and you want them to be right, to live faithfully. And so you first go to them. And then if that doesn't work, we take another person with us. And then if that don't work, you take the whole church. We can't allow that person to become lost because we didn't have the boldness to go to them, but instead we're talking behind their back. We can't. Their soul's too valuable. I'm telling you right now, if I were ever in danger of losing my soul, my brothers and sisters, I would pray that one would have boldness enough to help me, to get me back. I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to go to hell. But if I have lost my focus enough to the point where I'm practicing sin, I need to be corrected, do I not? I need to be fixed. Would you not feel the same way? You want somebody to have the boldness it takes to stand up and say, hey, you have a problem and I want to help you. Instead of going and saying, did you see so-and-so's issues? Did you see so-and-so's problems? That'll hurt them. Go ahead, Huey.
I've always said, I hope that if I fall away or go astray, that some of y'all will come to see me. And many times, members will fall away and stray away, and we never go see them. And when we finally do, it's too late.
That's right. It's a shame. We need to go. Every time I think about helping somebody, I always remember Jude 23, pulling them out of the fire. That's exactly what we're doing when we help somebody. When we go to that person and we're having compassion on that person, sharing the love of God with that person to rescue them, pulling them out of the fire. They're in the fire, and it's our job to pull them out. Hating even the garment that is spotted by the flesh. This is the way that word says. We cannot. We have to hate sin, and we have to oppose it. But often, like Huey said, we partake in it by not doing a thing, by sitting dormant, and we can't do that. We cannot. Backbiters speak evil of things more openly, but do not have the courage to face the accused with their slander. As I said, boldness is important. So there's two things that we discussed with this one slide. We talked about the sin of whispering, or the sin of whisperers, and the sin of backbiting that's in your workbook. I just want us to make sure that we've got both of those before we move on to the next slide. This is covering two. Speaking evil of another, backbiting. Now we're going to talk about haters of God. John 14 and verse 15 is the best way I think I can explain it, because the word tells us right out, if you love him, if you love him, you're going to obey him. And so when we are disobeying God and his commandments, that makes you and I haters of God. To do anything opposite of what he expects of us is to oppose him, to hate him. I know that sometimes we don't do that intentionally. Well, I would never want to admit the fact that I hate God. But when we don't follow his commandments, that's exactly what we're doing. Because we're saying that it's not important enough. I often think back to something I heard when I was a teenager. And this fellow was not a Christian. He was not a New Testament Christian, but he had a great point. I was at an event, and it was talking to teens. It was an event for teenagers, and this guy got up on the stage, and he said, every time you intentionally do something against the will of God, it's as if you're spitting upon the cross. It's as if you're saying that everything he did for you is not enough. When you intentionally go against what God has set in place, and you know it, you're spitting on it. You're saying, well, I know you did it, but it doesn't matter. We can't get caught up doing that. And ever since I heard that, like I said, this individual was not a member of the church, of the New Testament church, but guess what? He had a great point right there. And I never forgot it. I always kept it close because I don't want to be somebody who is just doing what I want to do, regardless of what Christ did for me. I don't want to do that. That's helped me since becoming a Christian to be better. Matter of fact, I told Heather, I think we got, actually, I had, right after I became a Christian, I had a little cross that I would carry in my pocket. And I did that for a few months because every time I'd reach in my pocket to grab change or something, I'd feel that cross in my pocket, and it would remind me, don't do anything that would cause me to metaphorically spit upon what Jesus has done. Live your life the best way. And I had those reminders, but we have to make sure that we're doing what he has told us to do. To disobey God is to hate him. James 4 and verse 4. Look at that point right there, the second point. A man cannot be neutral in his relationship to God. Neutral. What does that mean? If you had to explain that, what does that mean? Let's go to Matthew 6.
Got to straddle the fence.
Yeah. No man can serve two masters. It's going to cause turmoil. It says, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. We got to make up our mind every day when we get up out of the bed who we're going to serve. Y'all have heard me say that 1,000 times in the past year. Are we going to serve the Lord, or are we going to serve the world? If we serve the world and its wickedness, then guess who our master is? Satan. Guess who we're allowed? Go ahead, Miss Alicia.
I think a lot of people today, they, I don't have to put this, but they're thinking more of themselves. They're gonna do whatever they want to do, not even thinking good or bad. It's what suits their purpose, I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're going to look at their, I know that God tells me to do this, but I really, really like doing this. And it's a little wrong and it's a little bad, but if I'm only doing this one bad thing and my life is good in every other area, guess what they're still doing? Straddling the fence. He wants us all or nothing. Remember that lukewarm statement? Hot or cold, lukewarm, I'll spew you out of my mouth. We've got to be where he wants us to be. He'd rather us be one or the other. And like I said, we're defined as haters of God. Now, if you're wondering where I'm getting this list of things, this all comes from Romans chapter 1 and verse 30. So the basis of where these sins that we've discussed and the ones that we're going to continue to discuss throughout this lesson, they're all from Romans chapter 1 and verse 30. It's just a list there of things that he tells them to beware of and to take heed that this is sin, that this is wrong. So when we discuss haters of God, it's not always people who are intentionally haters of God. Now, if I say that lightly, folks might think on the surface, well, he's talking about a Satanist. He's talking about someone who is of the occult of some kind. No, haters of God can be anybody who just deliberately doesn't do what they're supposed to do. I don't want to find myself in that category ever. I do what I live the life of a Christian the best that I can every day so that I don't find myself amongst this category of things that we're discussing today. These sins and these, it says there, those who detest God. Now that is including the Satanist and the occultist and the people who are just absolutely opposed, but it can be as simple as somebody who just doesn't do what they're supposed to do.
Jonathan, when most people see haters of God, the first thing I think about is an atheist, somebody that doesn't even believe in God.
Yeah.
But it can also be when you don't do and don't obey God's will, you must be hating him or you'd be doing what he says.
If you love me,
Keep my commandments.
prove it to me by doing what I ask you to do. Hey, what do we as parents expect of our children? We tell them all the time. I know me and Heather do. Do what's right. Just do the right thing constantly. Just do the right thing. You can be a good kid. I know you. You got the power. You got the ability to be a good child. If you'll just do what we ask you to do. God's the same way with his children. Hey, if you love me, show me that. Show me that you love me. This is a commitment that you made to me. I made my commitment to you 2,000 years ago, but you made a commitment to me by saying that, by going down in that water of grave of baptism and rising up in newness of life to live faithfully. Now, if that's the case and you want to live faithfully, then show me by keeping my word. Show me you love me by doing what I ask you to do. I don't want this study of sin and these definitions of sin and these bad things to discourage us, but rather to encourage us to live faithfully, encourage us to continue doing what's right, and to maybe help us to do some fine tuning to our lives in some areas maybe where we might be a little slack. The sin of being despiteful, meaning grossly disrespectful. That would be what you would put there. The definition of despiteful is grossly disrespectful, caused by a feeling of supposed superiority. Well, being spiteful or despiteful is often coupled, like it says there, with the attitude of I'm better than you, or I'm better than the situation presented in front of me. And I can do what I want. When a child does something out of spite, what's he doing it for, Heather? When he's doing something, when Carson or Parker are doing something out of spite, what are they doing?
Somebody gets mad.
They do it regardless of what our feelings are. Why? Because they feel like they're above it. How many, I don't want to say Christians, because Christians, true Christians, people who are really walking after what they're supposed to do, they understand that they're under the authority of the Lord. But how many people do you see that don't care anything about this right here? How many folks do you know that don't care a thing about what this has to say? They're just here living their life. They're okay. They have no idea the authority that they're rejecting. But even if they did understand that there's rules in here that they're not doing, guess what they tell you? That's not for me. That's not for you. So you're better than the law of Christ. You're better than God. To put yourself equal with God over the authority which God has told us to be under. That's what they're doing when they say they don't have any time for it, that's just not their thing. They put themselves over that authority. They make themselves to be superior to that which God has told us that he expects of us. So we have to, don't ever put yourself in there. Don't ever do that. Look at the children eaten by bears. You remember that in 2 Kings, or torn apart by bears, eaten by bears. 2 Kings 2 and verse 23, when we discuss that, Elisha is going up on the mountain and those children yell out, "Go up, thou bald head." Immediately, they begin thinking themselves better. They wouldn't have had that slander and those words of slander had they not thought themselves better than him. mocking him because of his lack of hair on his head. Go up, thou bald head. That's absolutely what they're doing. They're thinking themselves superior or better than. They're not much better if they get torn apart by bears, though, are they? They got shown real quickly where they equate on that level. Elisha, being a man of God, doing what God expects him to do, gets mocked by these children, who in turn get the punishment. Let's go to Job chapter 30. Oh, I hit something, didn't I? If you get there, read verse 1 of chapter 30.
But now they that are younger than I have me in, is that derision, whose father
Derision.
I would have this dream to have set with the dogs of my flock.
Those that are younger than I now have me in derision. Let me look up that word real quick. Look that up on my Bible app here. See what that actually means in the Hebrew. Job chapter 30, and verse 1. Primitive root to laugh, in pleasure or detraction, by implication to play or deride. Laugh, mock, make merry. Sometimes it's used in the way of saying to play or to rejoice, but they're playing at his expense. They have me in derision. They're laughing at me. They're making a mockery of my suffering. They're making sport. Another way of translating that would be making sport of my my shortcomings, my problems, my issues. Look at verse 9. It says, and now am I their song, yea, am I their byword. They're not only going to the extent of just laughing at him, they've made him their topic of discussion. I am their song. I'm what they're singing about, they're talking about. That's all that they're discussing. You remember, Job was surrounded by those friends, and I'm going to say that loosely. These folks just did not trust that Job was where he needed to be and continued time after time, occasion after occasion going, won't you just fess up? You did something wrong. He said, I've done no wrong. There is no fault in me. I am this right here. There's no fault. If I had fault, I would admit it, but I don't. Time after time, though, they keep telling him, won't you haven't you had enough, man? Just tell God you're sorry. It says there in verse 10, they abhor me. They flee far from me and spare not to spit in my face. They absolutely don't. They're his friends there. These verses explain the attitude that they have toward Job's suffering. They absolutely think that Job's not being honest. They think he's totally hiding something. He's got to be hiding something. The amount of suffering that this man's going through, the amount of things that this man is facing, he's got to have some fault, and he's not admitting it. And upon everything that he has said, they're spitting upon it. Everything that he said, every time he said, I'm not at fault, they spit upon that very thing. They're just laughing him to scorn. Laughing him to scorn. Let's talk about the sin of pride. To be conceited. Remember, this is listed among Romans chapter 1 and verse 30, those backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents. We'll go to 2 Kings 20. Hezekiah. At the time, now this is going to be one of those hard words for me, so y'all bear with me. Berodach Baladan, at the time Berodach Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he had heard that Hezekiah had been sick, and Hezekiah hearkened unto them and showed them all the house of his precious things, the silver. Look, he shows them all this stuff. The precious things, the silver, the gold, and the spices, and the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah showed them not. Well, I appreciate what you did there, but look at what I've got. Check this out. Look at all this wonderful stuff that I have in my possession, that I'm great, I'm wonderful. Pride, conceit. He was given a gift there in verse 12. Sent letters and a present unto Hezekiah. Because he heard that Hezekiah was sick, he was feeling sorry for the man and he wanted to help him. But in return, what happened? Hezekiah said, oh, well, since you're here, check out all this cool stuff. He couldn't even be thankful for what somebody else was doing for him because he was so prideful of everything that he had in all of his possessions. Pitiful. Absolutely pitiful. A preacher told me one time that he was helping this individual, that they had got together and the church found a home that had needs, and they wanted to help him. They had people coming together and bringing tons, bags and bags and bags upon bags of groceries, and they got him. You know, this fellow was out of a job. His children weren't being fed like they needed to. The church found out about it, and they supplied. They helped out. They went to their absolute extent. When they pulled up on the front porch, the fellow was out there. And he said the fellow was a big old guy in some overalls. He was out there on the porch, laid back, sitting there with his feet propped up on the couch. They had a couch on the porch. He had his feet propped up, laid out, just as happy. And they said, well, we're with the church. We've got some stuff for you. We wanted to bring it by to help you. He said, all right, just throw it in there in the table in there. Just take it in there and put it on the table. So he sat there, and those men got the bags out and walked right past him into the house, put the stuff on his table, come back out. He just sitting there, just as happy. And then they said, well, we've got some money we'd like to give you too, just to help you out. We want to give you a little bit of money as well. They got all the groceries unloaded, and he said they reached for the money. And he said, just put it in that pocket right there. So prideful, so messed up in his own self and just so lazy. See, that's what pride brings about. Slothfulness, laziness, the feeling of entitlement, like the world owes him something. But it put this fella in such a bad position, he couldn't even get off of his bottom and help them get the groceries in the house. Now, how bad is that? He wasn't even thankful enough. He wasn't even to the point of so thankful that he would just help them. Oh, thank you. Now, I'm telling you, if I was without a job and my children were not eating because of the fact that I couldn't help, and I heard about a church that was willing to help me, I would be at their door helping them grab the stuff and thanking them over and over and over and over. Couldn't thank them enough. because they just provided for me. And then on top of that, for them to give me money, I would have probably fell to my knees thanking them. Thank you so much. This fellow he felt so entitled to what he had been given that he just rolled me over and put it in my pocket. How sad is that? How absolutely sad is that? I mean, we think about pride, and that's exactly what it brings about.
I'm curious, did the church go back?
You know what? I imagine they did not. I imagine they did not. Knowing the preacher that told me this, I imagine he had sense enough to know that that was just a situation that fella had put himself in. It wasn't, just bad luck. Sometimes we just have bad luck. Sometimes we just have things that happen. And we need that hand up. My daddy always used to say that too. And he'd say, son, I'm never going to be willing for as long as you're alive to ever give you a hand out. But if you're in need, I will give you a hand up.
One time I was up
And I
there
never
cleaning,
will. Go
cleaning
ahead.
at night, and there was a man come up, it was like late evening, and a man come up and he was wanting money.
Mhm.
So I locked the door and I made a call before I had a cell phone, come here and made a call to a man down the street that had a donut place that went to church here. He said, yeah, Freddie, tell him to come on down here and he can help me clean up and sweep the floors and I'll feed him and all his family. He had several kids in the car and he was a big old man. I'm talking
Yeah.
like you say, that kind of.
Yeah.
And when I went back out and I told him, I said, it's right down there on the left, right past that little convenience store. He said he would feed you and your family. All you have to do is just sweep. Oh, no, I'm not sweeping no floors like it was beneath it.
Yeah. More times than not, I've seen my stepdad offer jobs to people. Say, I've got some stuff, I got some work for you to do if you want to. Now, I've seen him equally amount of times be giving and help. But over and over, I've seen him offer folks time and if you'll just take a little bit of time and come down here, maybe you can sweep up my shop floor or something like that, and I'll give you some money. I'll help you out if you'll do a little bit of work for me. People, most folks are not going to do it. Most folks just want the handout.
Kind of makes you feel better to work for it than
Yeah.
just be handed to you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How much time do we have? We need to go ahead and end it. Daily Bible readers. That went fast. That class went fast. But I do appreciate when you guys speak up and speak out. That helps a lot. And we're able to get more in depth when that happens. I appreciate y'all's attention and your participation.
It's me walking the other than my business. And the trailer, I'm walking. Yeah, look, it's me walking the dog, and Mama said, and his mama washed me out of the.
It's obeying.
Obeying.
What's that?